Hi, I'm Fred Horch, running for state rep in District 49. And this morning I'm here with Fran Smith, who is the town clerk here in Brunswick. Good morning,
Good morning.
Fran.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining me.
No problem.
Great. So what do you do as our town clerk?
I have many capacities. I think the one that people are most familiar with is the fact I run elections. We also do business licensing, vital records, dog licensing. We work with the council to do minutes and permanent records. But probably the thing that's most visible in our community is our election, running in the elections for the community. So.
Right. And we have an election coming up, right? November 3rd?
I think there might be one. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess one of the first questions people have is if they've heard about this election, but they're not registered to vote, how do they register?
Sure, there's a couple of mechanisms that are in place. On our website, which is brunswickme.org, if you click on the departments and go to town clerk, and then you go to voter reg, we have on there a link that you can fill in of a voter card. You would need to provide a copy of a photo ID and something, if your photo ID didn't reflect your Brunswick address, something that showed your Brunswick address. You're certainly welcome to also come into our office to do so. We do have limitations for people coming in at any given time, so I do want people to be aware of that, but you are welcome to come. We will be starting in-person absentee voting in October 5th, which again, you can register at that point. That will be in the council chamber. And we, in the state of Maine, you are able to register up to and on election day. So that option is also available.
Great. So there's no rush. People can wait to the last minute, show up on the day and register right there. That's possible.
They can. I do want people to realize, especially for those who may have gone to the June election, we had a lot of protocols in place. The governor has issued an order, so we will have limitations of people in the building at any given time. That limitation will be 50, including our election workers. So I want people to be aware that it may take longer for them to a longer wait if they choose to wait to go to register on election day. They have that legal right, but I'm certainly encouraging people to do it in advance. I know we've been working with the college to come up with some ways so we can get their new students if they're interested in registering here. So yes, you have the right. I just want people to be aware that there will be social distancing and limitations on election day. But as I said, they're welcome to do so.
Great. So if I understand it correctly, people can go online and register online. They would somehow scan in like a driver's license?
No, they would have to. I'm sorry. They would have to make a copy of their driver's license.
Okay.
They can fill out the form, but we have to have original signatures.
Okay.
So they would either have to drop that off at our town hall, because we have a greeter in the front, or they can come in, or they can drop it in the mail. There are some limitations as to when that can no longer be in place, but I figure once October rolls around, people are probably going to be coming into our building to do it anyway.
Gotcha. So. Okay. So before October, they can go online, get the forms, fill them out, and then drop them off or mail them. After October, you'll be set up in the council chambers. People can come and register in person, vote absentee. They can do everything right there at the town hall.
Or they can just register if they want to. There's no limitation.
Yeah.
And it's going to be good because it's going to provide additional capacity for folks.
Right.
So, instead of having just 2 people in an office at a time, we're now going to be able to accommodate a larger number because we will have additional staff. So
great. Okay, great. So you mentioned absentee voting. Can you explain how that works? How does that work in Maine? What do you do?
Right. A lot of people confuse absentee voting with mail-in voting or early voting. So I'll give a very quick overview of each. The state of Maine has what we call absentee voting. In order to absentee vote, you need to request the ballot. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we don't get the ballots until October, so we will be mailing those out in early October. Then you return it by mail, or we have a drop box that will be being installed. And that's a process. So it's a process where you request it, and then we will and it's put in an envelope, and we will process those at various times the week before, not running any totals until after the polls close on election day. Early voting is more the traditional, like you go, your name is checked off and you put it through the machines. Maine does not have that. Mailing voting is where every voter on your list is mailed a ballot without requesting it. We do not also have that in the state of Maine. But
Great.
so we have absentee voting, which is allowed for any reason. You don't have to have, some states there's a restriction on what you're allowed to do or why you're allowed to do it. Maine, there's no, for any reason you're allowed to absentee vote. You don't need to give us a reason to do so.
Great. Yeah, thanks for explaining. That was very clear. So just so people are absolutely clear about this, you do not mail out ballots to anyone who has not requested them.
Absolutely, you have to request it in order for us to mail those out.
Great. Yeah, so tell me about this request process. How do you request an absentee ballot?
Absolutely. There are multiple ways. You can call our office if you're a registered voter. We will have to speak to you as the individual voter. That's probably one of the easier methods. A lot of people are utilizing an electronic system. So you will go online. Again, it's on the Secretary of State site, but it's also on that same link that we talked about on our site. And my goal is next week to hopefully get that information more in front and center so that people can just click on a button, go directly to our page and not have to search for it. I just haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. So hopefully that will be up next week. So you can do it electronically. Again, that's if you're already registered. If you're not registered, then it's a multiple step process. You can do a written request, which means that, and I know a lot of folks have been getting mailings, which I want to also let folks know that we don't do any of the mailings out there done by, whether it's a political party, a candidate, or a group. We do not mail out any applications unless we're requested, someone calls us and say, can we get one? We have those applications also available online that you can fill out and print out and mail to us. Those are ones that you don't need original signatures, so you could theoretically scan it in and also email it to us or fax it. But for the most part, people are mailing those if they're not doing it electronic. And also at beginning on an immediate family member can request an absentee ballot for you, and that's not by phone, that's only in the written format. Again, we'll see that more often when we start doing in-person. A spouse may come in to pick up their ballot, and they'll take their spouse's or a child's or an extent, certain family members. It's considered an immediate family member, but it's relatively broad. And the last method is in-person voting, which again will not start until October 5th. The state does not have to get us ballots until 30 days before the election. So we anticipate getting them around October 2nd, which we're going to be stuffing. Whoops, my lights went out. We'll be stuffing ballots. It doesn't sound very good, but we will be fulfilling the requests that we have that weekend and mailing them out. So hopefully we will have in-person voting available on October 5th, because I know a lot of people are interested in knowing when that is available. But at this point, and it's important for folks to know, if you have requested a ballot, you're not going to see it until probably around October 8th. Just because I would love to have them right now and be mailing them out, trust me, but I don't have them. As a matter of fact, the local election hasn't even been set yet. That will be set at the end of the week. So
yeah, we have some candidates still to file for the local election, so they don't even know who's on the ballot yet. They can't print them now. So the process is people can request the ballot now, and that was a good point you made. People are getting, like in my house, we've gotten 3 or 4 applications for absentee ballot, but that's not coming from you. That's coming from. It's
not coming from us, but you are more than welcome to use that form. They've been approved. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So if somebody gets one, it's nothing nefarious. It's nothing bad. It's people really want people to vote, but you're not mailing these out, and certainly ballots will not go out unless there's a verified request from a voter. Yeah. Correct. Great. Yes. Okay. Thank you for explaining all that. That's important to know. So we mentioned a little bit about 50 people in the polling place. Let's talk about election day. So we talked about absentee voting. That's what people can do before election day. That will start in October. But come election day, I know a lot of people like to go in person, but we have a pandemic and we have some regulations from the CDC and others. What exactly can people expect if they show up on November 3rd at the polling place? And can you tell us where the polling place will be this year and all that information?
Correct. We'll be at the Brunswick Junior High.
Okay.
And as I said, at this moment, the governor has given the executive order, so there'll still be a 50-person in the building, limitation. And again, we have about 20 election workers, so that's 30 folks at a time. We have a click in and click out method, so we do track the number of voters that are in, so we don't go over that number. Anyone who is there will just have to wait outside in line. We have social distancing. I think we put out cones last time, 6 feet apart, and we had 12 or 13 of them down the sidewalk so that we could keep people, distanced. There'll be social distancing inside. We are requesting that folks wear a mask, that just again as an additional precaution.
So you're requesting that, but not requiring that.
We can't, yes, the state has not, the state has said that we cannot require it.
Okay, so if people
but we are
don't wanna wear-
strongly, yes, we are strongly encouraging
right, sure.
masks. And I know in June, I think we had about 1,300 voters come, and I think only 7 didn't have masks on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we feel this is a good community for that sort of compliance. So, but as I said, we are strongly encouraging that. It's a protection for everybody. Our election workers will have, will all be wearing masks. That's not optional for those of us that are working that day.
Okay.
We have sanitizer everywhere. Everyone gets their own fancy little pen to take. I say that sarcastically. So you're not even reusing pens.
Okay.
We'll be sanitizing. We have, plexiglass barriers. We're making it as safe as possible for voters. I mean, it's the safest as, we all have to go to the grocery store. We all have to go to certain locations. We have those protocols in place. So. Right.
So do you recommend people vote absentee, or do you recommend that they vote in person, or do you think that you can handle either way?
We'll be prepared to handle it either way. We actually just had a staff meeting to talk about how many additional people we are going to need to have to successfully process all our absentee ballots and the requests that we're getting. I don't normally like to weigh in on how a voter chooses to vote.
Right.
I will tell you that if I were a voter and I had concerns, it's November, it could be a beautiful day, could be a cold day. Certainly if you have time restrictions, you may want to do the absentee voting, because I can't tell you, we had no lines really in July for our election, but we're obviously going to have more people come that day. So people who come to the polls, just please be patient, recognizing that we have to follow state guidelines. I know many of folks are used to going into a very busy, bustling, polls, and it's a very different feel for those people who went there in June and July. I keep saying June, but in July.
Yeah.
So I guess I would put that caveat: if you're on a time restriction, you may want to consider absentee voting. And absentee voting does have so many mechanisms and easy ways to do it. But again, it is a personal choice.
Right.
So
right.
We'll be prepared in both situations.
That's great. You mentioned some workers. Are there opportunities for people who want to volunteer or work at the polls? Do you need more workers? Are you set?
I think we're all set.
Okay.
Yeah, we have been very fortunate to have had a lot of folks volunteer, but we also have a real good core of election workers. And the reality is, when we have to limit the number of people in the polling locations, that also limits the number of workers we need at any given time, because if you only have 30 voters in, there's just so much that can be happening versus before, when you might have lines, you would have 10 lines going. We're going to have 5 lines going. Right. So I think we're certainly we have a good pool of people that are great folks that have worked for us before, and we are always looking at, we're always looking for a few more Republican workers to balance it out. We tend to struggle to get more of them. So that is an area that we could use some more workers, but for the most part with that, we are going to be reaching out to those folks who are generous enough to offer, try to get some idea of their abilities. We may be able to utilize some of those folks when we process the absentees early, because we use additional folks when we do that. So we are trying to reach out to everybody, but also recognizing that we have some folks that are very well trained and that have worked for us for many years. So
right. Now, processing the ballots, that reminds me of the ranked choice voting issue. And of course, we had a ranked choice primary election here, and we didn't find out the results of that until a week later because those ballots had to go and be counted in Augusta. Can you explain? This has been a big question people have had about ranked choice voting because some elections will be ranked choice and some won't, right?
Correct. I think, well, obviously there's something that's happening with the president's race right now that originally was supposed to be ranked choice, but there's been some lawsuits and some things that are going on. So at this moment, I think it will not be a ranked choice race unless something dramatically happens with the courts. And that is not my area of expertise. That's the Secretary of State's office. I do believe for the United States Senate, there is, anytime there's an office that has more than 3 people, more than 2 people running, it's subject to ranked choice voting, at least at the state level. I'm not sure if that, I haven't seen it at the county level. We just happen not to have 3 people at any given time. So I think in this election, to my knowledge, the only ranked choice race that we are going to have is the U.S. Senator. And I just have not seen the ballot, to be honest with you, because again, they're just settling everything there. As a matter of fact, I think your race, it originally would have been a ranked choice, but I just looked at the list because you had mentioned that as one of the questions, and I only see 2 candidates running at this point. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know again if the what if the party has the ability to put someone in or not. So I don't know though. So there's a potential that District 49 could have 3 folks if the Republicans put in somebody under some other mechanism. Again, that's beyond my understanding of how things happen.
Yeah, actually, even if there is 3, and I'm glad to hear that you only saw 2, because that's the word I've received. Even if there are 3 for my race and for the governor's race, that's actually barred by the Maine Constitution. So it's a weird thing, but I'm glad to hear.
I know that sounds weird because I know that's, as I said, I'm not an expert at the legality of who those particular races are.
Right.
Because obviously I'm like, well, in July we had 3 that were running as a Democrat in District 49, and we had a ranked choice voting, which again went to the state.
Yeah.
And I know last year I think there was the governor was on at the one level, but not at the other level.
Right.
So that's just not unfortunately my area of expertise, because that's the state has to worry about that. I just have to worry about when the ballots come that people get the right ones. So.
Exactly. Right. And then counting them too, because as I understand it, maybe you can correct me, we counted the ballots here locally in a ranked choice, but if nobody gets over 50%, then something else has to happen to those ballots. Is that right?
Well, actually, it's not the ballots in Brunswick.
Oh, okay.
And what they do is all of our machines are run by data sticks, very strong USB data sticks. So no, in a recount where you had 2 candidates and it was close, they would come and take your ballots to do the recount.
Okay.
What they do for ranked choice voting is they will take the data sticks. Of course, there's some small communities that they will take their ballots and run them through the machines because they don't have machines. But in Brunswick, they just take our data sticks. Okay. And only then, I guess last year we could have saw that with a race where they came and took our data sticks, and then it ended up being so close that they then had to come and take the ballots. And that was for not any district in Brunswick, but it was for a congressional district 2 years ago, I guess now, for the congressional number 2. So so they just come, which is why you actually get probably a quicker return. I know it sounds like a week sounds like a lot to a candidate that's waiting, but traditionally if you have recounts, they can drag on for quite a period of time because there's so many different ones. So
great. So thanks for explaining that. So basically we take the ballots, we run them through a machine, and that creates this little data stick which counts everything.
Right.
Then if it's a ranked choice election, that would go up to Augusta, the data stick, and they would process it for figuring out who actually won that ranked choice. And the only thing, as far as we know right now, that could only happen for the Senate race at the moment, because the presidential race is still up in the air with the court case.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, great.
And I think I also want to emphasize, because I know this is obviously people talk about, machines and all that good stuff. I want folks here in Brunswick and in the state of Maine, I can't speak for other states, but our machines are not networked.
Okay.
They are individually machines. So there's no ability to hack. There's no ability. They are programmed by one entity. We are required to test the ballots to make sure that they are counting correctly. Everything is secured. So I'm not programming the machines, and the person who's programming the machines isn't testing the machines, so it's sort of checks and balance there. But I want people to know that they're not networked. There's not the ability for someone to quote unquote hack in and get the ballot, to change the ballot results.
Right.
And I will also say that there's always a paper ballot that accommodates that. So when we do, if there were to be a close race between two candidates that required a recount, they're looking at the ballots. So we have a pretty good system and a pretty secure system in this state. And I want our voters to understand that we don't fall under a lot of what other states who may have different systems do.
Well, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
And how close does it have to be for a recount? Do you happen to know? Is that something?
It's a very small percentage,
Okay.
and that there's not a cost related. I suppose anybody could if they wanted to pay for a recount, but again, that's determined at the state level, but it's a very small percentage.
Right. Okay.
I'll tell you, in a community where there's machines, we had a recount a few years ago for a state representative primary district, and our vote came out exactly what the vote was after they tallied them. So people can be confident that the machines do a good job. You're actually taking the human piece of it, is where you tend to have errors just because people have been working all day and they're counting. So the machines have been very, very reliable. So I want to get people to feel confident in that I have a lot more trust in the machines than humans who have been there all day, and it's easy to just put an extra. Trust me, when I'm preparing my test ballots, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I don't have to hand tally these. And there's just a few ballots, So.
Yeah. Well, I know you got your hands full, and you guys are doing a great job as far as I can tell. And you have a secure ballot box coming. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, it's been shipped.
Okay.
There's been a lot of, obviously, I'm not going to get into the weeds of the Postal Service. We haven't personally had issues with them. I'm not getting in the middle of that. Yeah. But we have the option of getting a secured, when I say secured, it's locked, it's cemented into the ground.
Oh gosh, so no one can steal it and mess with the elections
we don't want somebody stealing it. And we're also going to have a security camera on it 24 hours a day, just for that extra measure.
Right.
And it's going to be located at Town Hall. We don't have it yet. We won't have it until mid-September, but in reality, it's not going to come into place until October 2nd anyway.
Right.
5th, or when we actually have ballots and they're being returned. So at that point, we expect a lot of folks to utilize that system. But I also want folks to know that the council did vote to put return postage on absentees. So if you're comfortable with using the United States Postal Service, then feel free to do so, and you won't have to put return postage on your ballot. This is, we haven't done this for every election, and I don't think this is necessarily going to be something that we will continue to do in the future, at least at this time. But obviously the council felt with the COVID-19 to provide every opportunity to folks as possible. And also, as I said, we'll have the drop box, and you can vote in person. So there's a lot of mechanisms you can to get your ballot back and feel comfortable with that. With how that's done.
So there's a lot of opportunity. People can mail their ballot, they can put it in the drop box 24/7, or they can bring it in person into the building, right?
Right.
So that absentee voting, and that'll happen pretty much the whole month of October. So
correct. Yes.
People have
and that's great. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there is a deadline for in-person voting, and that will be the Friday before the election.
Okay.
So I just want folks to know that Monday and Tuesday, unless you have an extreme circumstances, you won't be able to come into our office to vote like you did in July. That's actually extended. Normally, it goes to Thursday night, but with the pandemic, again, the governor's extended it to Friday, close of business, and we'll probably be here till 5 that day, but I can't say for sure. It says you can do it till 5, so we'll probably allow that extra couple of hours because we normally do close at 2:30 to the public on Friday. So we're probably going to do that just because we want to give ample opportunity. But I do want people to know that there are circumstances that you can do that on Monday and Tuesday, but they're very limited. and you have to sign an oath saying that you meet one of those qualifications. It could be medical, it could be all of a sudden you got called away and you didn't know it, things of that nature. So it's important for people to know that there is a deadline for in-person absentee voting. Does not apply to registration, so people could come and register on Monday if they wanted to. Obviously, on election day, we ask them to go to the polls because that's where all the action's happening. So, and we have one person in our office, so we recommend going where you have 25 people to help you out.
Right. Okay. Wow. So, but just the overall message I'm getting is that we're doing everything we can to make sure that everybody can cast a ballot safely in Brunswick.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great. Is there anything else you want to tell us about elections that we might not have covered?
No, not really. I think we've covered most of the points. I mean, I appreciate, the community. We have a lot of great election workers who volunteer their time for very little pay. I want to thank my staff who works tirelessly. Even a couple of retired folks have come back to help us. I mean, you can't, and I like to point out that this isn't my election. It's not the town clerk's election. It's the community's election. So it takes a whole community to successfully pull one off. And we do ask for folks to realize that if you have applied, because we are just kind of a little bit behind on we're catching up on our absentees, but if you have applied electronically, we hope to be caught up. So don't get concerned that you haven't got your confirmation. You should be getting it by the end of next week if you haven't. And then at that point, we'll feel pretty confident that we'll be caught up and be able to do it on a daily basis. So you don't need to reapply a couple of times. We've had a couple of people who have done that. So only apply once, please.
Okay, so there is a little bit of a backlog. You've had so many people applying for ballots.
Well, yeah, when the electronic system went up, I think it was the 17th at noontime. And within 3 days, we had over 1,000. And it was interesting because at that point in the state of Maine, there were 20,000. So we had 1/20th of the entire state just in Brunswick. So you can imagine it's taken us a little bit of time to get caught up, but we're finally over that hurdle and definitely making progress. So, and as I said, we've seen it slow down at this point, though we anticipate that it will pick up. And I also want folks again to emphasize that we don't have ballots until October 5th. And if we will be mailing them, but we do have to let the Postal Service have a few days. So look for your ballot to come around the 8th through the 10th, depending on if it was local or if it had to go, out of state. It obviously may take longer.
Right. And I know that you post a sample ballot on your website, and that will happen about the same time somewhere.
Yeah, they come at the same time with our regular ballot. So yes, and I do that again, so that folks have that opportunity. It's going to be interesting. I'm not sure how many state questions, but there's a very high probability there's going to be some local charter questions on there.
Right.
So if people have the chance, and that's another, I guess I would say, an advantage of absentee voting is that you have the time to digest the information if there's a lot of questions or complex questions or there's multiple candidates. So there is an advantage that some people like to do it because they like to have the opportunity to study or research the issues or candidates. So that's another plug, I guess, if you feel you want that additional time, absentee voting or looking at the sample so you know what's in it, what the questions or people are in advance is always a positive thing for you to do.
Right. Yeah, good point. And I like to do that too. I really appreciate that you post those sample ballots so you know exactly what you're going to see when you go in to vote. That's really helpful. And I just want to say, as a candidate, the town clerk's office, you guys have been fantastic. So
thank you. We tried.
We really answer all my questions. And of course, you making yourself available for this interview, that's really generous. Is there anything else that you guys do at the town clerk's office that you'd like to tell people about? Anything? I know the elections is really taking up a lot of time, but you do other things as well.
Oh, yes, my gosh. We license over 2,800 dogs. So, and I think we're going to really encourage, just as a side note, that starts, we send out email notifications just to remind people in early December. We are going to really encourage folks to do it via mail. All the information will be there. We do, obviously, if you get married in Brunswick, you're going to come see us. If you have a child and you want to get a birth record or a death record or anything of that nature, we're the place to get it. We also seem to be the hub of, if anybody has a question, you call the town clerk's office, including do you have the number for bed, body, and bath and beyond? The question that we have. I guess people, what's interesting is certainly if you grew up in a small town like I did, your town clerk knew everything. We try to know what we can, but we are a much bigger community and don't necessarily know everything. But we do really try to help folks as much as we can, and recognize that, again, be patient because our phones are busy, busier than normal, but we do definitely try to make sure that we get back to everybody and take care of their needs and what have you.
Great. Well, thanks again, Fran. So this is Fran Smith, our town clerk. Great office, and don't call Fran for the number for Bed Bath & Beyond. but for anything to do with elections,
we're just gonna have to look it up on the internet ourselves. So, yeah.
Right, but anything to do with elections, for weddings, for birth certificates, for
shellfish licensing, that's another
shellfish.
big one.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
my son, of course, as you know, you had a lottery and he was dead last in that lottery. So we're.
I know. I always feel bad. I tell you, I feel really bad. But hopefully there'll be some changes that will allow the fact that he applied to give him some credit at some point in the future. So hopefully we'll see. We'll see how that all comes out. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, I know that's out of your hands, but we feel like it was a fair, that somebody had to be last. So it's
right.
I am convinced that it's fair and what you weren't holding it against us. But
right. Oh, trust me, no. I always feel bad when everyone it's like, oh, I don't have one for everyone,
Right.
And that's true for the commercial guys too, So
oh yeah. Yeah,
it's hard because, like you say, there's always somebody who's done it. I know Everett did it for several years, and and I know it was like he enjoyed doing it, and it was obviously a good little gig for him. But maybe next year, hopefully, he'll apply again, and maybe he'll get selected. You never know.
Yeah, if anybody doesn't know, shellfish, you can get a clam license as a student, and then of course there's a commercial one. But for any student out there, if you want to work hard and make some good money, it certainly is. It's an opportunity we have in Brunswick that's really great, and certainly Everett really enjoyed it. It's hard work though. There's a lot of bugs, and you're out,
and
but
literally knee deep in mud.
Exactly, yeah, and it's. I have to say that Everett's mom was not super happy about the laundry when he would come home.
Oh, I had some parents that made them, take the old crappy car to do it. So whatever. So yeah.
We only have one car, so I made Everett bicycle the first year. So
that's not a bad thing. No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that in my car either. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Fran.
Sure.
If people have questions, the website is brunswickme.org. Is it? Did I get it right?
.org. And our telephone number is 725-6658.
Okay, fantastic. And once again, I'm Fred Horch. I'm a candidate for representative to the legislature here in Brunswick. It's District 49. And this was one of the series of interviews with people in our town who are helping us out. So once again, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe, be well, and thanks for voting.